All right. Well, good morning. It's 10:32. So I'll call the special meeting of the California Community Power Board to order. And Brittany, can you just confirm that we do have a quorum? Is that?
And verify that there is a quorum present.
Thank you. So the first measure is just to see if there's any matters subsequent to posting the agenda. Do any directors have any matters that escaped this special meeting? Not seeing any. Okay. So let's turn to public comment on matters not listed on today's agenda. I do see a number of attendees. Are there any public comments not on the agenda, not on matters on the agenda? You can raise your hand to be notified. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So with that, let's bring it back to the consent calendar. There's just one item on consent to extend our ability to meet remotely. And I think we've done this before. Can I get a motion on that?
I'll move. Sears.
Okay, that was Valley Clean Energy. And
I'll second.
I see MCE is a second. Let's see if there's any public comment before we do the roll call. Any public comment on this one? Not seeing any hands go up on that either. Okay, let's bring it back for a roll call.
Okay, for the consent agenda, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power SF, believe is absent. East Bay Community Energy, okay, I will come back.
Here, I'm sorry. I'm just getting my mute unmuted.
Okay, perfect. Was that a yes, just to confirm?
Yes.
Thank you. Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Director Balachandran, we didn't hear you, but I saw you come off mute. Do you have any volume? Can you speak? Can we hear you? Okay, he's saying yes. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Thanks.
thank you. Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
thank you. The consent agenda passes.
Thank you. So moving into item 6, and I want to start by thanking Deb Emerson and John Soleil for leading our negotiation to be able to bring 2 geothermal deals to us. And I'm going to make a pun just in the nick of time. So for those knowing about import capacity, they're going to present on this item describing both deals. And then after their presentation, I'll bring it back and we'll be able to ask questions about both deals. And then we will vote on them one at a time. So we're going to start out with, I think we're going to Deb Emerson first.
Good morning, board. Thank you all so much for having us. My name is Deb Emerson. I'm the managing director for Sonoma Clean Power. I was asked to work with the developers in negotiating the contracts and working with the POC over the last several months, and want to talk to you about the resolutions that we are bringing for you today and seeking your approval. Next slide, please. So the first resolution is the waiver of the 60-day notice of intent to consider these projects. And there's a reason behind this and asking for this speedy timeline. As you recall, we submitted a MIC expansion request, maximum import capability request, to the California ISO in March on behalf of the CCAs that were working for the firm Clean Resources RFO. We asked for various points to come into California to be considered in the California ISO's expansion study and request. And that was rejected. So although we were under exclusivity rights with both developers, the fact that we did not have a signed contract made the ISO not consider our request. They came out on May 4th, however, and let us know that should we have a signed contract for any facilities that would be coming online in 2024 or later. If we had a signed contract, we could submit an additional request by June 1st. So we didn't have a lot of time to get all of that in order, but that is why we are coming to you and asking for your approval after we have gone through and made the negotiations with each of these developers. So that is the first resolution. The second resolution is to approve one of the projects that we negotiated, and that is with the Fish Lake Geothermal project, which is the developer of Open Mountain, and I will go over the details of that project in a moment. And then the second is a portfolio of projects that we have negotiated with Ormat. Next slide, please. So as you recall, last fall, the board approved the issuance of going to market and releasing an RFP for the firm clean resources. This is a procurement mandate that the CPUC put out, and it's basically biomass or geothermal energy. So we did release that RFO. We had the bids due in December. And then in about a month, just a little over a month, we were able to shortlist, go through all of those bids that we received, which were 6 different participants and totaling 16 projects. We ran the analytics, conducted interviews to be able to shortlist what would be the best projects for the participating CCAs. That came down to 2 different developers. One is Open Mountain and one is Ormat. And the portfolio of those combined resources would satisfy what we would need in order to meet our obligation for the CPUC's firm clean resources mandate. In January, then the board allowed us to shortlist those projects and to proceed with negotiations. So that started out with getting exclusivity agreements in order with both participants, and then starting the negotiation process for the contracts. And so the contracts are with Open Mountain, it's 1 project. And then with Ormat, it is a portfolio of various projects that will make up the total amount of what we need. We did not receive many offers at all for California projects. And the projects that we did shortlist were very competitively priced compared to the other offers that we received. Next slide, please. So first I wanted to speak about Open Mountain, the Fish Lake project. So again, Open Mountain Energy is developer, and this will be called the Fish Lake Geothermal LLC. It is geothermal. It's 13 megawatts capacity. It does qualify as PCC1 and would have full capacity rights. It is located in Nevada, and the COD is June 1st, 2024. We negotiated a fixed price for 20 years with no escalation in that. Now, this is in Nevada. And so on the next slide, I'd like to speak to you all about what that means. So part of the requirement that the CPUC has put forth is that the firm clean resources have to come with capacity rights. The way that the California ISO ensures that you have capacity rights for a resource outside of the California ISO is through the maximum import capability process, or MIC. So I'll refer to that as MIC from now on. So that is how California ISO says that you have resource adequacy is when you are allocated and you select those tie points in which you will be delivering energy over that specific tie point. So you could get your MIC, so to speak. That is how it qualifies for the capacity. The developer cannot apply for MIC. Only load serving entities can get MIC through the California ISO process. So each CCA, we will get our own MIC to support these projects. As I mentioned earlier, the California ISO is going through this MIC expansion request, and there is a lot of transmission development being done currently in the Nevada system. So they are studying this of what type points would be allowed to bring more capacity through to support that type of expansion. So that is why we are going to file, should you approve these contracts, tomorrow, 6/1 is when that is due, so that we can ask the California ISO to please consider our request for expansion. It does require the signed PPA. So for Open Mountain, also because it is in Nevada, they have multiple delivery point options, one of which we believe has ample MIC. So we're not as concerned with getting those rights for that project. For Ormat, we have the option, but not the obligation, to reject projects should we not be able to secure the MIC at the delivery point. And I'll go over the Ormat contracts in a little more detail in the next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, Ormat is not a specific project in a specific place. It is a portfolio of projects. And the reason for this is because as they start to drill, they'll have a better indication of what the size of that facility would be. And because we do need quite a bit to satisfy all of the requirements from the CPUC to satisfy each CCA's mandate, we have asked for a maximum of 125 megawatts combined from all of those projects from Ormat. We have negotiated a contract with them that the minimum they would be able, that they would provide would be 64 megawatts. But again, we're really shooting for 125. The sites that they have listed should be able to provide that. But we also have the right to reject a project should we not be able to get MIC. Now, again, we have to get MIC in the current state in order for the capacity to count. This also qualifies as a PCC1. The locations are in Nevada, and then 2 projects are in California. The expected COD will vary, but the earliest one that's slated to come online is 2024. We also negotiated a fixed price with no escalation, and again, a 20-year term. Next slide. Again, this is the portfolio, and we will be given notice by Ormat when they believe they've done the drilling, they believe a site will be worth X amount of megawatts. It will come from this specific site. It will deliver at this particular delivery point. They will give us ample notice of that. We will then have 3 months to decide if we're able to get the MIC. However, and I want this to be very clear, even if we're not able to get the MIC within that 3-month time period, we've written the contract so that we would be able to extend the COD day for day until we are able to obtain that MIC, so that we have the assurance that it will be able to count. And we can do that up until September 30th, 2027. Now, that is our option. It is not our obligation. So just because if in an example, we did not secure the MIC, we do not have to reject the project. And one reason I could think this may happen is if the CPUC allowed for some period that you could come online without MIC, if those rules or anything changed, or if we see that the expansion is going to go through maybe 6 months later, we have that option. So I just want to make sure it's clear to everyone that, of course, we want the MIC, and in today's rules, we need the MIC in order for it to count. We do have that option to deny a project, though, if we cannot. If we do deny a project coming into the portfolio, then the minimum amount that Ormat would be required to bring into the portfolio would also decrease. So I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. So the minimum would go down and the maximum could go down. And I think that's it for my part. I'm going to kick it over to Jean, who's going to talk more about how these actually fit into our portfolios, and specifically about that CPUC mandate.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you. I'm Jean Solé. I am Deputy Director of Power Resources for San Jose Clean Energy. So as you're probably aware, we're going forward with this firm clean resource solicitation, in part because the CPUC has required this procurement. In 2021, they required folks to undertake significant procurement, including 1,000 megawatts combined, including all load serving entities in California, by June of 2026. The requirement is firm clean resources or resources that are either zero emissions or qualify as RPS and have an 80% capacity factor. As Deb mentioned, that's typically geothermal or biomass. The requirement is a minimum 10-year term. What gets counted isn't the installed capacity, but instead the capacity adjusted for effective load carrying capability. And then, you know, the table here on the right indicates that this is indicates the requirement for each CCA that has indicated interest in participating, and that adds up to 122 megawatts of NQC, which is not the installed capacity, but the capacity that counts. And as you can see, we should be able to meet that. Importantly, I'm going to go over the contracting approach, which is very similar to the approach that we use for long duration storage, for those folks who participated in that effort. And it requires all CCAs to agree to step up for at least 25% of what their initial allocation is. And so we would ask members to seek authority from their respective boards and commissions for authority, not just of their initial amount that they've requested, but also for the additional 25% step up in case that becomes necessary during the life of the agreements. Next slide, please. So just so you have the table there, I know this is something of a busy table. We've run this through the POC, but it basically lays out what the initial nameplate amount that has been allocated to you and what the step up would be. So that states for you what you should be seeking authority to contract for both OME and for Ormat. And as you can see, the total amount is 138, which then provides for the reduction to make it to NQC of 122. Next slide, please. So again, the format is pretty similar. There is a power purchase agreement between CC Power and the developer, which includes standard development and performance deposits. It has been provided in substantially final form. It's already been approved by Ormat and OME's respective management and boards. And you will have 120 days to get approval from the date of execution, the date of execution being expected to be today. And as in the case of the long duration storage, the PPAs have an exhibit that is signed by the developer, CC Power, and the CCAs, which allows the developer to reach through CC Power to the CCAs, but only for their share plus 25%. So the developer gets the right to reach through CC Power, given that CC Power doesn't have substantial assets, but the quid pro quo there is that their access to the CCA is limited to 125% of the initial entitlement share. Next slide, please. So I know that the board has been very interested in making sure that all of our agreements meet basic requirements in terms of labor and environmental quality. On September 15th, when you authorized us to issue the solicitation, you did so with the direction that we use the special conditions relating to labor and environmental quality that were developed for the long duration storage solicitation, which for workforce was either there's a project labor agreement in place or the developers agrees to comply with California prevailing wage requirements as though the project were a public works, even if it's not, with the ability to audit that compliance with that requirement if there is no PLA. And then you asked us in our RFP to note that we encourage use of local labor. For environmental requirements, the requirement was to meet permitting requirements and to state a preference for projects that avoid sensitive habitats. And then for environmental justice, you asked us to require that counterparties attest to not using forced labor, and for developers in their responses to us to identify benefits to local communities. And so we have done that. Now, one challenge that we had with this solicitation is that the board's requirements were phrased in terms of California prevailing wage and labor requirements, whereas the majority of the projects that bid and that were shortlisted were in Nevada. So with the help of Kevin, we did some research and identified, number one, that Nevada has a prevailing wage program. And so there would be Nevada prevailing wage information available that we could use to come up with a similar requirement to the one that we have in California. In other words, even though the projects are not public works projects, the developers would agree to apply prevailing wage requirements as though they were. And then that would be verified either with an audit or with a project labor agreement. But in Nevada, there was also an alternative. Nevada has a renewable energy tax abatement program, which allows qualifying projects to get some tax benefits. And in order to qualify for that program, you must pay your construction workforce no less than 175% of the statewide average annual wages. And you also must provide adequate health insurance, the requirements of which are laid out in that renewable energy tax abatement program. And so we thought that that alternative provided also some protections to ensure appropriate compensation of labor. So we made that another possible way to comply with our labor requirements. So basically, folks can either participate in RETA, or they can comply with prevailing wage requirements as though it were a public works project to be verified either with a PLA or an audit. There was some back and forth with the developers in terms of what they were willing to agree. OME pretty much accepted our language with minimal changes. Ormat wanted some changes, but they did agree to language where they would make reasonable efforts to ensure that their employees for new construction work were paid no less than prevailing wages for Nevada or California as applicable, and that they would certify that this was the case and provide us the data to demonstrate compliance, or they can have a PLA, or they, in Nevada, for those projects in Nevada, they can demonstrate that they are making use of RETA. So basically that was substantial progress. And I should emphasize here that this is kind of groundbreaking for projects in Nevada. We're not aware of a situation where Nevada projects are required to comply with these heightened labor standards. So big thanks to Deb and Kevin for their, in any event, really extraordinary work getting these projects negotiated in a very short period of time, but nonetheless maintaining that focus on the board's priorities for labor and environmental quality. Next slide, please. As in the case of the long duration storage, we have project participation share agreements for each of the projects. It's signed between CC Power and the participating members. It basically is a commitment for the participating members to fund the project obligations, provides for sharing of the project revenues and benefits. It includes a step-up requirement, as I mentioned previously, capped at 125% of the initial entitlement share. It provides for liability and insurance. It sets out the voting and governance structure, including delegating to the CC Power board the votes for the key big money decisions. The vote will be one participant, each participating member gets a vote, and the non-participating members will abstain from voting on these issues. And then other items get voted on by less important, less, sort of don't result in more or less money sort of decisions are made by the project operating committee, or some of the more ministerial decisions are delegated to the general manager. Next slide, please. So the approval process today, we're asking you to waive the 60-day notice period per the board requirements. Typically, we issue a 60-day notice before the CC Power board will consider a PPA. In this case, because of the abbreviated timeframe, in order to allow us to put in that MIC expansion request, we're asking you to waive that 60-day notice period. We're asking you to approve signing these two agreements. If that happens, the expectation is that Tim will and the counterparties will execute the agreement today, and that will become the effective date, allowing Deb to work with Carrie to put in those MIC expansion requests. And then each of the participating members will have 120 days to get approval of the PPSAs and the buyer liability pass-through agreements. We know that a number of boards and commissions take a month off during the summer, and so we provided an extra 30 days for folks to get their approval. which runs through the end of September of 2022. Next slide, please. This project was managed in accordance with the project. I forgot what we called it, but we had a basically memorandum laying out how we were going to go forward with this project. We had weekly meetings with the POC to keep them abreast of negotiations. I really want to thank Deb and Kevin for a really extraordinary effort, as I said, and Ryan for a lot of dedicated work on analysis and support and information on the MIC process that I really believe they did an extraordinary job here. Myself and Kelly helped to organize, got the RFP out and did some of the coordination. And then as always, thanks so much to Braun and Blazing for their participation, legal support, and a lot of great help. Next slide. So a reminder, we're asking you to approve the resolution number 1 to waive the 16-day notice of intent period, and then approving the Fish Lake Geothermal project and the geothermal, the Ormat geothermal portfolio project in order that we can sign these agreements and go forward with our MIG expansion requests and have these agreements available to meet our firm clean resources requirement.
Thank you. So thank you, John and Deb, for that excellent presentation. I think what I'd like to do, unless there's an objection, is see if there's clarifying questions, if there's any thing that you need to ask our presenters, and then take public comment before we come back for our own discussion on this. Does that, I'm seeing a couple nods. Anybody object to that? That sounds good. Okay. So let's start with clarifying questions. Anything that you didn't understand or need answered? Does anybody have anything they want to bring up now? I see Barbara Hale.
Thank you. And thank you very much to the POC for the all this work and on an accelerated pace. I'm wondering, Deb or John, if either of you have any insights into how easy or difficult this MIC process will be. What are we thinking this process will entail, and how likely the requests will be granted?
So we are in uncharted territory. Of course, we're probably all quite familiar with the annual MIC allocation process that we've likely all participated in. There's an additional process that you can then ask the California ISO to expand that to the long-term allocation so that you don't have to compete for the same space every year. And so that will be something new for all of us. We've not done that. We are working with the CAISO to understand that process. Again, with all of the transmission upgrades that are ongoing in Nevada's system, that's really why the CAISO is doing a large part of this request. And it is a study. I do want to make sure people understand, by us submitting this expansion request today or tomorrow, it doesn't mean we're going to get the expansion. It's just asking the California ISO to please consider that as you're considering expanding the MIC. How difficult it will be, I cannot tell you for certainty. I do believe that we will all work together collaboratively in trying to secure the MIC so that we can take possession of those projects when they come online. That's the intent, and that's how the contracts are written.
Who else has questions? Anyone else? I see Robert Shaw.
Thank you, Jeff. Deb, I'm just noticing a slight difference between the staff report allocation numbers for the Ormat and then what was in the presentation and what's in the contract. And I just want to make sure sort of where that understanding lies. So for instance, in the staff report, the total allocation for 3 CE's percentage of the project, and the step up provision is 27.9. And in the presentation, it would be 29, just over 30, I think. And then in the contract, it's for Ormat, it's just the percentage. It's not an allocation of actual megawatts, and it's at 18.9. I think the contract at 18.9 is intended to be the allocation amount, the 17.9 plus amount to cover the step up provision. Am I understanding that correctly, that 18.9 that's in the agreement covers the step up provision?
I'm going to kick that over to Jean because I think she'd probably be able to answer that more clearly than I would.
So the 18% would be the percentage of the available capacity. So, and that would mean that, you know, initially, for example, for Ormat, I believe the initial capacity is 13 megawatts. So it would be 18% of the 13 megawatts. At that point, if one of the participants doesn't participate, that share that did not participate would get allocated on the same basis. So 18% of the amount that was not taken by one of the CCAs would be allocated to 3CE. And same thing then for Ormat. In terms of the numbers, it's my understanding that the numbers in the slide are the final numbers. There were a couple of late-breaking adjustments because MCE had participated in the discussions until the end, but then they determined that they were not going to go forward. And so the amount from MCE was reallocated to OME and to Ormat, but because OME had a very sort of a very emphatic concern about negotiating with credit rating entities, the amount from MCE was reallocated to the credit rated CCAs and not to the non-credit rated CCAs. That was a very small amount because the OME agreement is only 13 megawatts. And so MCE's portion was very small. And then when that got split up among the credit rated entities, that was even smaller. For Ormat agreed on a one-time reduction to the total portfolio amount. And so the reduction due to MC's departure from the project didn't really result in a change to what the respective CCAs would be taking, but instead resulted in a reduction from, I believe it was something like 155 to 125. But the numbers should be the numbers in the slide, which should match the memo because it was the same table prepared by Ryan. So I will double check that. But what's binding are the percentages in the PPSAs.
Thank you. Robert, does that attend to your question? Does that answer?
Let me just ask one other question. It might be for the attorneys. Is Exhibit S of the Ormat portfolio project, those are the allocations? I see Brittany nodding.
Yeah, I might just have Kevin Fox confirm that, but correct. Those are the allocations and those are the same percentage shares in the memo.
Yeah, and to confirm, Brittany, it is the numbers that are in Exhibit S in the OME contract, and that exhibit is Appendix M in the Ormat contract.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to Mitch Sears.
Yeah, quick question. Probably this is for Deb, but the MIC process, and maybe I missed it in the memo or in the presentation, but when would we expect to have an answer on that?
For the expansion request,
Yeah.
we do not know. This is the first time that the California ISO has actually done something like this. So there's not really a process or a BPM that would specify how this works. As for the annual process, which I believe we'll all be taking part in, that's already started to kick off. And so we should all be receiving our allocation amounts that then we can select the various points in which we would like to try to get the MIC for next year. Now, none of these projects are scheduled to come on in 2023. However, if you have the space and then you can show that you have a long-term contract, that's that process that I spoke about earlier, asking the CAISO to honor the term of that contract for that space.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for this period here before we go to public comment? No. Oh, I'm saying, are we?
Sorry, just one other quick one to make sure I heard you correctly, Deb. When are we filing that at the ISO?
The MIC expansion request we will file either today or tomorrow. It's due tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, last call for questions this round. All right, let's open it up to public comment. So folks who want to make a public comment, if you can use the raise the hand feature. On my screen, it's at the bottom. I know some Zoom platforms have it at the top, but should be in your menu. And
can we just confirm this is public comment for all three resolutions?
thank you for confirming that. Yes. So just to be more pointed on that, the three resolutions are the waiver of 60-day notice that will allow us to take a position potentially on these two deals, and then the approval of the Fish Lake geothermal project and the approval of the Ormat geothermal project. So again, if you want to speak, please raise a hand feature. Not seeing any hands. So let's come back for discussion. So this is the time to share input on this and any interest or concerns or things you might need to discuss to be able to make a vote. And Director Balchandra.
No, I just wanted to thank and congratulate Deb, John, and the entire POC for this super leadership and getting this to the finish line. I don't have any questions or comments. I'd be happy to make a motion for one or more, chair, whatever is your pleasure on how you want to handle this.
All right. But let me hold that for 1 second and let's go to Lori Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you. I also just really want to congratulate the team, and I know Deb and John and the full team put a lot of work into this. So thank you very much. And I will second Garisha's motion.
All right. Well, we have a first and a second, but I do want to make sure you get a chance to have any further discussion. Is there any more that needs to be said? All right.
And if
Well,
we could take these one at a time.
let's take them one at a time. So the first up is resolution 6A. We have a motion and a second, and Girish, that was on all three items, or Brittany, would you like separate motions or you like separate motions? Okay, so let's clarify. I'm asking you to recharacterize your motion for item 6A. Does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I will move resolution 220502.
Thank you. And Lori Mitchell, are you okay seconding that?
Yes, I will second.
All right, let's call roll on resolution 220502.
Okay, Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Abstain.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll ask for a motion on item 6B, the Fish Lake Geothermal Project Resolution. Anyone wish to make that motion?
I'll move.
Director Pepper,
I'll second.
and we have Director Sears. All right, let's call roll on resolution 220503.
Central Coast Community Energy,
Yes.
Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Abstain.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes,
Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
thank you. And finally, we've got item 6C, the Ormat Geothermal Resolution. Anyone wish to make that motion? Don't be shy.
I'll move.
I'll make the motion.
Oh.
That's Lori. Lori's got it.
Okay, we have San Jose making the motion. Robert, would you like to second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, let's call roll on resolution 220504.
Okay, Central Coast Community Energy,
Approved.
Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy,
Abstain.
Marin Clean Energy,
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes,
Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
so thank you again to our team, headed up by Deb and John. Amazing work. And the fact that this went smoothly is quite a testament to your hard work. Thank you. And you have something to say. Go ahead, Deb.
Well, I did want to give kudos, of course, to Kevin. He's really part of our team, and thank him so much for all the work he's done on this. And then each of your POC members have just been outstanding. This was a complete team effort, lots of meetings. They really dedicated a lot of time. So please thank them. They've represented you well through this process.
Thank you all for making time for a special meeting to allow this to proceed and be able to be applicable for the MIC expansion. And I think we are ready to adjourn. So unless there's any quick hands here with anything else. All right, we are adjourned at 11:20 a.m. Thank you all. Have a good day.